Good afternoon and welcome to John Box Watercolor. Today we're going to be painting yet another Western scene, but before we get started, if you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up, and if you like what you see, consider subscribing. I'm going to put a reference photo over here on the right-hand side just so you can take a look. This photograph, it's very old. It's taken by a famous Western photographer from the late 1800s, Irwin Smith. And we're going to be turning it into a painting today. It's pretty simple. It's a fairly large landscape scene. We've got a gentleman on a horse, and the horse is drinking some water through what looks to be a river, through a canyon or something like that. So yeah, really excited to do this one. It's got a really nice kind of feel to it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-wet my paper here. I've just got some dirty water, and I may leave a few areas without water just to kind of get some different texture and patterns, that sort of thing. But in general, I want to keep this fairly wet. And what this is doing is it's going to help us keep this first wash very light. With watercolor, as we move wash to wash, we're only going to be getting darker and darker. So we've got to really try to maintain as much light as we can. Now I've got some little cerulean here, a little cobalt, and I'm just trying to mix up a good cool color for our sky. And that looks pretty good. Yeah, I think that looks great. And I'm just going to kind of feather it in there. And since this is already pre-wet, it's going to sort of just spread itself out across our paper, and we won't have to do a whole lot. Now, I'm going to be painting almost everything in this figure here on my second and third washes, so it's going to be okay if I let this blue kind of run through our figure here. That's not going to affect anything. I'm going to do the same thing for that canyon there. This first wash is quite honestly going to be primarily just a very cool wash. We're going to be leaving this wash behind in the water here, which I'm just going to darken it up just a touch. Just a touch, but I want to try to mimic the tone or the color that's in our sky here. That's a little too blue. I'm going to dull it down a little bit, just reaching into a different pail that's got some old dirty wash. There we go. Okay. Oh, something like that. Okay, and again, just letting that lightness that we've already got on our paper just kind of spread out. I'll add maybe a little darker top to our sky. Now I may take here, just add, it's a little yellow ochre, a little burnt sienna, just maybe some warm here in our figure that I can leave behind later on for some highlights and things. Not much though. And I'll be coming through with this canyon here as well, but I'm just adding a couple of warm areas. Just something to work with later on. And then maybe a little bit of a warmer, darker area in our water here, just for our reflection of our horse here. We'll do something like that. And truth be told, it'll be very hard to see when this dries. It dries so light. All right, so I think that's about good. We are going to let this dry, and we're going to come back and we will be working on our second wash. All right, we're back. This is now completely dry, and we're ready to start working on our second wash. As always, I'm going to be starting with things that are further in the distance and kind of working my way forwards. This next wash, we're going to be doing this painting in, I would consider it 3 washes, and then a wash at the end with some darks and details. For this second wash, I'm going to start with our kind of canyon in the background, and I want to keep it a little bit cooler than you might expect. Coolness typically tends to push objects backwards in a landscape scene, and so I kind of want to have a little bit of some coolness to this canyon shape here in the background, just to help push it back. I'm going to be careful painting around our cowboy here. And as we get down towards the bottom, we'll be warming things up back there. And again, I want to be leaving a few gaps of light just to give the impression of details. Kind of just creating a bit more interest in everything we're doing. Okay. I'm going to take some pure water and just kind of drip it into our canyon there. Again, just trying to get a little bit of variation, introduce a little bit of interest into the shape. All right, we're going to warm it up towards the bottom here. Now, I got to be careful because I want to leave this gap on this right rear side. Kind of shows the river kind of jettisoning off to the side there. I'm going to keep it warm over here. Again, I kind of pull this little island estuary area forward. I'm going to use the side of my brush there to kind of create some of those little gaps of light. Again, just looking for variation and interest in our shape here. Okay. All right. I'm going to pull a little water just to get some soft edges in a few places. Don't want all hard edges. Watercolor is a lot about variation. Mixing up your warms, your cools, your hards, and your soft edges, your lights and your darks. Always trying to get variation. I want to make sure I clean this up a little bit around our horse here. Something like that. Okay, let's start working on our figure here. Now, a lot of our cowboy is going to be in a similar tone to the mountains back here. So I'm going to have to be really cognizant of either changing the temperature or kind of varying from our subject photo and going with a much darker tone, just to help it stand out. Or it could go lighter, but I think darker would probably be the better call here. I'm mixing up a kind of a warmer color for the hat here. And what I'll do is I'll kind of just get in the area where it needs to be. And I'll grab my small brush and kind of hash out the details here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit of some Mayan Orange for the face there, just to get a little bit more of a skin tone. Okay, there's that. And he's got a bandana here. What do we want to do? I want to go with something that'll add a little bit of a striking kind of effect. So we're going to go with that red bandana. It's got a really nice, powerful pigmentation to it. And you know what? It's kind of bled over into our mountain a little bit. Typically, I just leave that alone. You want things to bleed, but it's moving a little bit aggressively there. So we'll just touch it up like that. All right. Now for the shirt. Let's grab some of that Chinese white. I want to mix a kind of a creamy color. And since our background is cool, we're going to go warm. We are going to go warm. Okay. Let's get some yellow ochre in there. Darken it up a little bit. Let's just make a mark and see how that looks. go a little bit warmer. And let's do that. I want to leave just that little bit of white there on the back part of his shoulders and his sleeve, just to help kind of differentiate his shape from the shape of the canyons behind. Okay. All right. Grab that smaller brush. We'll come in here, work through a little bit. All right, it's starting to bleed into our mountain a little bit, but you know what? I think that's okay for now. I'm gonna get it a little bit yellower here for the pants, and we're gonna be painting the horse a darker color, and we're gonna use that dark to negatively cut out a lot of the details for our cowboy. So I'm just kind of working through here very quickly. Very low stress area at the moment. All right. Got our tail there. I'll just start the process of those legs. Again, grabbing my smaller brush to come in and pull up right next to the edges of our sketch. Yep. Now the horse's, I guess you'd call it a snout. I don't know what you'd call it. Muzzle? I don't think it's a dog. Whatever, their front nose, mouth area is submerged in the water. So I'm going to leave it kind of unfinished there. Okay, there's that. Can't forget about the boots. Every cowboy's got to have a good pair of boots. It's got a nice shape to it. A little bit dramatized, but I think it works really well for this. Okay. Working towards the back end here. I probably should have made my drawing a little bit darker. I'm kind of losing my pencil lines a little bit, so I have to be careful. I know that back leg goes backwards and this one kind of goes down. And again, both of the feet are submerged. And I could use something darker. We're going to come back and darken up the tail. We're going to darken up a lot of stuff in this painting. So, all right. Now, while this is still wet, I want to get in some darker, warmer areas back here in the line of our kind of canyon. And I'm hoping I can get them dark enough. But I just want to do this while this is still wet, just to try and kind of let some of it feather out a bit, soften up. And I'm using my brush, not so much as a brush, but just dabbing into this sort of horizon line area and just letting the paint do what it wants. Watercolor itself is a much better painter than we could ever be. So you want to let it try to do its own thing as much as possible. Okay. I think this looks good so far. I'm squinting my eyes, just trying to isolate just tones and shapes. Just to see if we're close, right? It's only our second wash. We've got a lot to go, but I want to make sure we're close. Okay. I think we're good. Let's let this dry. I'm going to dab out. Man, that red really ran into that mountain, which is not a problem. I may just grab a little bit of that lavender just to try and cover it up a little bit. Add some more details. Okay, let's let this dry. We're gonna come back and we'll start our second wash. All right, here we are back again, ready to start our next wash. Something I did do off camera right as I paused before. I forgot he had a somewhat of a lariat lasso thing here. So I just took my palette knife, the horse was still wet, and just scratched that little loop in there. All right, so before we start working on our next tones in our main figure here, what I'm gonna do is I've got this little flat brush here. It's a soft aqua Raphael, it's a 14 size. It's really good for kind of glazing over areas. And I'm gonna mix up a warm kind of dark mixture here, pretty dry, and just take this brush and glaze over a few areas just to add some kind of darker speckling. And what it'll do is it'll, again, I'm just looking to do it in the areas that are close to our viewing point, close to our figure. It just helps kind of bring a few things forward. Maybe a little bit more water. It's a lot more water. That's okay. This could be some grass and things. I just felt like when we went and did the soft kind of darkness bleeding into our canyon in that foreground in our first wash or our second wash, it didn't get quite dark enough. So I just want to darken it up a touch. All right, that looks better, except for this side. I don't like the shape of what's going on over here, but that's okay. All right, let's start working on our darker tones. First place I'm going to start is in our figure's face. The face is darker than the rest of the hat and the shirt that it's next to. And what it'll do is it'll help separate those two areas. So what I'm going to do is I've got a warm color. It's a darker tone than what it's touching. I'm going to take my little brush here and we're just going to work in there. I'm just going to pull it down. A little something like that. I'm going to take this, and you know what, we'll add a little detail to the hat there. That looks good. And you know, again, I know it looks pretty dark now, but it'll always dry lighter. I'm going to add a few just little kind of dark wrinkles and things to this bandana area. And we're going to be doing the same thing to the shirt here. I don't want it quite so red for the shirt, so I'll throw in some blue to neutralize it. And I need to kind of work out where that arm is there and just cast a little shadow there, not much, on where that arm is. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Just in the underarm, just cast a little shadow, and it'll help break it away from the mountain behind as well. Yeah, there's something there. Maybe a few little details here for the shirt at the very bottom. I'm going to grab some pure yellow ochre here and throw it there just for some indicators of gloves, I think. Yeah, I think that looks nice. And I want to take this palette knife. I don't like the shape of our face we've got going here. I'm going to pull that down a little bit. I think that looks better. I may just come in here and just, oops. I was going to try to scratch out a highlight on an ear or something, but that was a little bit strong. Yeah, we'll leave that alone. Okay. Let's start working on the pants down here. The pants are going to be matching the tone of our horse. And so I'm going to use this kind of burgundy color we have here for the pants, and then I will either cool it down or warm it up for the horse to try to get some of that differentiation between the two shapes. If you can, it's always better. It always makes a little bit more of an impact. If you've got two shapes that are next to one another that are the same tone, if you can change their temperature rather than just their color, it definitely will help with the impact. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that here just because I don't think I can really go cool with the color of the horse. I mean, you could. There are definitely some kind of white, gray, pale horses out there, but since I've already got such a warm kind of underpainting for it, I'm not sure it would do much. All right, so got the legs there. Let's take this. I will throw some blue in there. We'll cool it off. And now I really got to go dark with it. Let's make a mark and see. It's awfully close to those pants. Let's throw in some yellow ochre. I just want to get a little bit something going, a little bit something different. Yellow ochre, little neutral tint. It's a little bit better. We'll go with that. I'll maybe leave a gap or something to help get that differentiation we're talking about. And again, pretty low stress through the body of the horse here. You're just kind of making those lines to get everything started, and I'm going to come back with my smaller brush and hit all the necessary details. I'm just getting the main areas. Okay. All right. I'm going to spray just a little water on here. Help things flow. Grab that detailed brush there. You'll see, I talk about this in other videos, but you really have to have some faith when you're painting. You might not like with where you are in those first couple of stages, and I can't tell you how many paintings I have thrown away that I just, right in the middle, I was like, it's ruined, it's done. The more you paint, you start to realize that paintings sort of have this kind of ugly stage where they don't look so great, and it's not until later on do they really start to take shape. Now, within our horse here, well, actually, before we do that, I might take this palette knife. I'm telling you, if you guys don't have one, get a palette knife. It is one of those things that you don't think you need for watercolor, but it is just fantastic for working in highlights and breaking up shapes and things. It's great. There are some darker areas within the horse, and I want to do those while this is still wet. One of which is kind of underneath the horse's neck here. There's a bit of some shadow going on. And so I want to just pick up some neutral tint and just kind of dab it around there. We've also got some darker areas on the ears. And then kind of mixed in the face here. The tail is especially dark. I definitely want to throw that on there. And I'm hoping that this will be dark enough. It's sometimes when the paper's wet, you do have to come back and darken a few things. So darken right there underneath the shoulder. Kind of give it some darkness under the belly. Yeah. And maybe just a few dark places on our cowboy there. Again, always be thinking about tone when you're painting. You notice I didn't even change color the whole time because I really don't care about the color so much. It's the tone that I'm interested in. Dark versus light. All right, now we're going to get into something that's a little bit more intimidating for our painting here. We need to have a reflection. We've got to have one. It's in our photograph. It's kind of necessary to convey that, hey, you know, this is water. So I'm going to do two things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the paper below our horse here. I'm going to kind of block the upper half, take my spray bottle, just saturate the lower half. Then I'm going to mix up a cooler color. Put a little cerulean in there and get it a bit more watery. I need to lighten it up and just I'm just going to draw some horizontal lines there. Not much. Just something like that. Needs to be darker towards the bottom and thicker. And as it moves away, you need to be lighter. It's really difficult to measure how many ripples you need or how much effect. You definitely don't want to overdo it. It can be a really strong effect. Make some marks and then just kind of leave it alone. It takes time, and you will, with time, get better at estimating, you know, whether or not you have enough or too few. I'm going to darken up some areas. Again, just on this lower area of our scene here. All right. Take a little bit of that red. I'm going to pull it up there on his face. Okay. All right. Let's go for our horse's reflection. We've got a little water texture there. Now we're going to mix up something a bit warmer. This is one of those things we've just got to go for, right? The legs are going to be the most important part. But as we pull it down, you want to leave gaps, and then we'll kind of hit that area that is wet, and it should just sort of disperse, and that will help. It'll make our lives easier. The best reflections typically have that blend where they're sharp and then they sort of bleed off. And I'm squinting my eyes here. The values are looking decent, and then I'm just going to start to sort of drop in some darker areas here for the horse. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. I'm squinting my eyes here. I want to have a few thinner lines around the horse's legs and snout and everything. Now here I can tell you I didn't leave enough gaps of light through here. So let's take our palette knife. Again, great for water, has so many uses. All right, something like that. And I want to solid that up a little bit there. Okay, I think that looks better. Let's connect that shape a little bit. And always be squinting, guys. It makes your job a lot easier. If you squint, it kind of blurs everything, and it just lets you see those tones, those lights and darks. That's what helps the painting read. I'm just going to pull that straight there. Okay. I think that looks really good. One thing I'm going to touch on here, I want it to be a little bit darker leading into the horse. I felt like there was too much of a transition from very dark to sort of faded. I think it needed to be smoothed out just a touch. Okay, I think that looks pretty good here. All right, let's let this dry, and then we're going to come back and add some final details. All right, we're back. Let's finish this guy up. First thing I want to do is I just am picking some dark paint from the corner of one of my squares there. I need to add our reins here. Okay, something like that. All right, and I've pulled out a couple of tubes of paint. I've got my yellow ochre here, and I'm just going to pull straight from the tube to really get the impression I'm going for here. And I wanted to use it on these gloves here, just to give a bit more of a statement. And I'm going to try to soften those up, or shape them up, I guess I should say, with that palette knife again. Let's see if we'll shape that one into kind of a fist. Scratching out some of the ends there. And this one just needs to be I just wanted to add some color there to really kind of have those hands sort of pop out. Let's see here. I'm going to take this paper towel and clean them up a little bit. But do not be afraid to use paint straight from your tube. Right? If you're trying to work on something and really get an impact, go straight for the tube. It adds a really nice effect. As watercolorists, we don't get the pigmentation and the opaqueness of other mediums, and so sometimes it's nice to add that into your work. And I've also pulled out, this is just some burnt sienna. I wanted to just add a little color onto the legs there, and I'm just going to throw that on there and then smear it around just to add a little bit of something. Okay. All right, I think that looks good. Now, let's see if there's anything else I want to add dark-wise. I think we're good here. I can kind of create that. I guess it's the bridle of the horse. It'll dry so light, you'll hardly be able to see it, but just a little extra details there. Ooh, you know what I do want to add? I want to take and add, I'm just going to go for some neutral gray here. I wanted to add some mane to our horse there. And then maybe just add a little texture to the tail as well. I'm just doing that with a dry brush. All right, perfect. Okay, last but not least, I've got a little white titanium gouache just to add any highlights where we see necessary. It's also nice to add it within your figures just to break up some shapes and things. I might just touch on a few areas here. And again, all this is doing is just helping break up some areas there. Okay. All right, that looks good. Ooh, you know what? I may add just a bit of a line on his hat there. I don't like that second one. Need to leave that dark. There we go. All right, perfect. Definitely don't want to overdo that. Now let's go for the signature and let's talk about what we like and what we don't like. Okay. All right, there we go. And maybe, it's always hard to put the brush down. Just a little more bright red on that bandana. Okay, we're done. Let's take the tape off, see how our lines look. I'm gonna have to clean that up just a little bit. Overall, I think the painting looks really nice, actually. I was a little worried in the beginning. My tones had gotten messed up in our kind of foreground area here. I think the background canyon looks nice, but I was getting worried. Just to remove these little areas, if you get these bleed throughs on your tape, just take clean water, brush it on there, and then just take a paper towel and press it, and it will help. These are dried, really dry though. I might not be able to get a clean look on those. No, let's try down here. Depends how long they've been dry for, and it also depends on the color paint can affect it as well, but normally it'll help. Those are pretty dry. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about that. Yeah, I was worried, but I think this looks really good. I think that maybe I could have added a few darker kind of accents down here at the bottom of our water just to kind of pinch that together. I also would have liked, you can barely see this on camera, the top of our sky is slightly darker than the bottom, and I would have liked to accentuate that a little bit more and really get that atmospheric effect. Other than that, though, I think it looks nice. So if you stayed with me to the end, I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. And if you haven't, consider subscribing. And remember to keep on painting. Thanks.